Okay, everybody, I think we can start our meeting today. Just a couple of organizational issues at the beginning, as usual. If you have any questions to our presenter, please write them down in the chat window. We will have the questions and answer session at the end of the presentation, so we will gather those and ask them to Steve. Also, a reminder to all of you so that you don't have to ask this question in the chat window. The presentation will be in English language and there will be no current translation. The translation will be made, but within a couple of days after today. So the webinar will be in English language. I don't think I need to introduce our guest. This is the second webinar of a series that we started last month. In the first webinar, you guys learned why trading psychology is so important for us, for traders, the major traps that we fall into, and why it is important to have a strong trading process. I believe that today, in a webinar entitled Thinking Differently, Developing a Winning Trader's Mindset, we're going to get a little bit deeper into the trading psychology subject. So I'm not going to take more of your time, and I'm going to pass the mic to our special guest, Mr. Steve Ward. Steve? Yeah, we have some trouble with the sound. Steve, you're unmuted. If you can check your microphone.
Hello, hello, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Hello, 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 hello.
Hey, Steve, we can hear you.
Hello, hello, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Hello.
Yeah, we hear you pretty well.
Hello, hello, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello, just doing a quick sound check because I believe there was no sound before. So are we all good now with sound?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Okay, right, I think we're good for sound now. My apologies for that before. So hello, welcome to Trading, Performance and Psychology, webinar number 2, brought to you by XTB. My name is Steve Ward from High Performance Global. This is the second in our 3-part series of sessions on trading psychology. Just for those of you who were unable to attend session 1, just a very quick introduction to myself. My name is Steve Ward. I've been working as a trading and performance and psychology coach now for almost 11 years, since March 2005. Spend my time working with traders and fund managers from banks, hedge funds, investment funds, energy companies, proprietary trading groups, and also with guys trading from home, either part-time or full-time. Do that all over the world with traders right through from beginners all the way through to highly experienced traders and successful traders, trading maybe 20, 25 years or even more. Before that, I worked in sports and performance psychology with athletes and teams all over the globe, over 30 different sports. I've done some work with professional poker players and some work with corporations around peak performance as well. So in December, we looked at trading psychology, sort of a general overview, some key themes and ideas. Today, we're going to take the topic of thinking differently, looking at the trader's mindset. And when we get together in February, our topic will be emotions and trading. So today, it's all about our thinking. My apologies, I've just noticed we just got a slide challenge here. This is a quick whiz through for those of you from session 1. You'll recognize this, the slide set's reset itself, so we just need to get to session 2. Here we go. Okay, so let's start off just by thinking about thinking. Now we call this metacognition, where we're thinking about our thinking. So let's just start today's session with a little bit of thought about how your thoughts, your beliefs, your perceptions actually affect your trading decisions and performance. So maybe think of some examples from your trading where either in a good way or in a bad way, your thoughts have had some sort of effect on your trading. And just take some time to think about, what's different between your thoughts when they are, when you're trading well against when you're trading not so well. How does your thinking change? What kind of things do you notice? And just take a moment to think about maybe any memories or worries or fears or self-criticisms or other unhelpful thoughts that you get that kind of get into your mind when you're trading and maybe get in the way. One of the key skills to get better at managing your thinking as a trader is actually spending more time thinking about your thinking, developing your metacognition. So that's going to be one of our key themes today, is to really start thinking about the thoughts we have, when they're useful, when they're not useful, and then what we can do to manage them when maybe they're not being that helpful. Now, if you remember from session 1, we had a quick look at this little decision-making exercise from behavioral finance. And I asked you to imagine you've been given $1,000. You could keep the $1,000 or take a risk. And the risk you can take was to toss the coin. If you're correct, you double the money, or if you're wrong, you lose what you had. And then I asked you to think about a different situation where, in this situation, you're paying me $1,000. Again, you have the option taking some risk, and if this time, if you are correct, you give me nothing. But if you're wrong, you give me double the amount, $2,000. I asked you to kind of think about which one you would choose. And then I shared with you the fact that when this is asked to the wider population, 84% of people in the first example will actually keep the money. and 70% in example 2 will take the risk to avoid the loss. And what we see here is called disposition effect, and it shows that people in a situation of gain become risk averse, and in a situation of loss typically become more risk seeking. So this is a tendency we have. And the challenge with that is, if we go back to our golden rule of trading, run your profits, cut your losses, is the disposition effect is exactly the opposite, but it's the way that most people think. And this is one of the challenges we've got, is that a lot of our intuitive, quick ways of thinking we have can be quite useful in life generally, but in the markets they often are detrimental. They're working against us. And Mark Douglas, the late Mark Douglas now sadly, in Trading in the Zone, talks about how the best traders think differently from the rest, and that is very, very, very true. When we look at successful traders, it's not just about the skill, it's not just about the strategy, it's also about the mindset, how people think. Now, when we look at mindset, mindset is essentially a collection of beliefs, things that you believe to be true. These can be things about yourself, they can be things about the markets, they can be beliefs about trading, about risk, uncertainty, your beliefs about losing, about success, about failure, about mistakes, about the world. And what's important to recognize is that we've all got these beliefs, and they're largely held unconsciously, so we're not always aware of them, but they are like filters. They are, as information is coming into your brain, part of your filtering system are your beliefs. And Van Tharp, a trading psychologist from Market Wizards, talks about how actually, we don't trade the markets, we trade our beliefs about the markets. And the reason is that I guess we could think about beliefs as being like glasses, like lenses that we're seeing the world through. So, if I believe that the markets are rational, then when I'm trading the markets, that's a lens that I'm watching it through. If I believe the market is going up, then as I'm viewing the market, I'm seeing it through that lens. So it's not always the actual, I guess the pure price action itself that we're trading. It's our views and perceptions around the markets, around, whether we believe technicals or fundamentals, whatever we believe in, that is shaping our perception and that is shaping our experience. So we need to be aware of that. But what it also means is that our performance is also a reflection of our beliefs and our perceptions. And here's how it kind of works. This is kind of the filtering system. So, events are coming in from around you, and as you're trading, you're taking information, it's coming in through your senses, and it's coming in through the brain, and as I said, part of that filtering system is your mindset, is your beliefs and perceptions. And from that, you are then generating emotions and behaviors. So we can look at how this might work with an example. So let's imagine now someone's got the mindset that losses should be avoided at all costs. Losses mean I'm a loser, and that losses are about being a failure. So when the event comes in, when that person experiences a losing trade, and it goes in through that set of filters, the emotions and behaviors are, might be stress, there might be some frustration, anger, a tendency to try and avoid losers, hanging on to losses and so on. So the emotions and behaviors we see are a reflection of the trader's mindset. So mindset is, kind of it's a filtering system, and it's important because if we shift the mindset, so if we keep the event the same, it's still a losing trade, but we have a shift in mindset to losses are a part of trading. It's okay to have losing trades. It's probabilistic. Some trades will win, some trades will lose. A trader with that mindset in the same situation is calmer, less stressed, less frustrated, takes their losses much more readily. And the only shift we've got there is in mindset. The event is the same. The emotions and behaviors are different because of the shift in mindset. And this is, I think one of the key things as you go through trading is it's not just about the skills and the strategies. This was one of our key themes from the first webinar, but it's also about learning to, the mental skills of trading and the emotional skills and the physical skills, of which part of that is our mindset. Now, just very quickly, a little bit about the neuroscience of beliefs, which I think is quite important. Beliefs are very powerful because they sit quite deep in the brain. So in a very simple model of the brain, we've got the brain stem. This is shared with reptiles. We've got the limbic system. This is the sort of the emotional part of the brain and memory. And then we've got the cortex, essentially sort of the thinking brain, the cognitive part of the brain. And your beliefs sit very deep in and around the limbic system, which means they're very strongly related to and kind of have close attachment to emotion, which is why, you know, if somebody challenges a belief you've got, if you've got a strongly held belief, we can get quite emotional about that. You know, we become quite defensive, and that's because of where they're sat in the brain. They're deep down, unconsciously nestled in there in that limbic system. Now, what it means for us as traders is we want to, where we can, utilize any useful beliefs we've already got, and we also need to be aware of, have we got any beliefs that might be limiting, that might be holding us back? And if so, we need to change them. We need to think like traders. You know, the average person coming into trading will not naturally think like a trader. This is what we see from the behavioral finance research and what I've seen from the last 11 years of working on trader training programs in banks and prop trading groups particularly. So it's you know, we need to evolve in a slightly different way. We need to practice thinking like traders. Now, let's have a look at a few themes around mindset, some things that I think are particularly important about the way that we think, that are important in terms of being successful in trading. Then we'll have a look at how we can begin to identify your own beliefs, and then I'll give you a process for changing your beliefs should you recognize any that maybe aren't useful. So we'll try and get through the whole process in this session today. So I think one of the most important parts about mindset comes from some great work by a lady called Carol Dweck, Dr. Carol Dweck at Stanford University. And she talks about the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. Now, I would say in my experience that the majority of the successful traders I've seen have come from a growth mindset, where basically they believe that, you know, your potential can be developed, you can change your intelligence, you can change personality, you can change your character. It's got plasticity, and the opposite of that is a fixed mindset, which is all about kind of, you know, you kind of think that things are more fixed, they're more static. The fixed mindset person is very results driven. The growth mindset person is very much around kind of, I guess, development and becoming better. Two quite different mindsets. And of course, it's not, you're not either fixed or growth. It'd be a continuum. You could be anywhere along the continuum. Now, I've put at the bottom there a little link to mindsetonline.com, because if you're interested, you can go online and you can go to Carol Dweck's site, mindsetonline.com, and you can take a little test. It takes just a few minutes, and it will give you an indication as to what kind of mindset you are. Now, if we look at the fixed mindset, we can already see here, look at the very avoids failure, desire to look smart, avoids challenges, stick to what they know. Feedback and criticism is personal. They don't change or improve. It's easy to see how that mindset would work against you in trading. You know, if you avoid failure, then you're trying to avoid losing. That either means you're loss averse or running your loss, or you're not taking trades. If we look at the growth mindset with the desire for continuous learning, confronting uncertainties, a big part of trading is dealing with uncertainty. The fixed mindset is much more stressed and frustrated by uncertainty. The growth mindset, much more open to uncertainty and seeing, well, let's see how things go. Embracing challenges, well, that's trading. It's a continuous series of challenges, not afraid to fail. You know, much more open to losses, to making mistakes, learning from them, trying to get better from them. Lots of effort in to learn. A key factor for becoming successful is effort over time to learn what you need to learn. And then feedback, you know, very important to the growth mindset person. So I think it's such a key part, because, you know, learning to trade is as simple as, you know, is a learning activity. And, you know, the better learners essentially have an advantage, and the growth mindset is key to that. I remember not so long ago I was doing some coaching, and we did a presentation to a bank, and the traders came along, and we had a limited number of coaching spaces available. And one of the people who was the most keen to get onto the coaching program was actually the bank's most successful trader. And when we started the coaching, I was really curious why he was so keen to come on the program. And he said to me, well, look, Steve, you know, I don't know much about the coaching other than what you've told us in the presentation, but I'm open to the idea that maybe I'll get something that could make me even better. And that's a typical growth mindset. So the growth mindset, you know, deals with uncertainty better, deals with losing better, deals with tough times better, much more learning focused, and much more probably resilient, you know, much more resilient in the face of the stresses of trading. So growth mindset is key. You know, we can change, we can develop, we're trying to be better than we are. And I think what we see in the growth mindset is this focus on learning. And this is one of my little catchphrases I use, particularly with newer traders. So if you're a newer trader, this is something that's very important for you. When you're learning to trade, the most important thing is learning to trade. What we see often in newer traders is they get too focused on trying to make money or not to lose money, but they become very focused on their P&L, on their profits and their losses. And what that does is that actually interferes with their trading. What we want to be able to do really is keep the focus on learning. In the first, it depends on how much you're trading, but for professional traders, I'll often say the learning phase is, you know, the initial learning phase could be 2 to 3 years long, where, you know, you're going through different market cycles, you're trying different markets, you're trying different strategies, you'll have some highs to deal with, you'll have some lows to deal with, but all the time the focus, you know, is very strongly on learning about the market, learning about yourself, trying to get better, and trying to get better at getting better, you know, learning how to learn. The danger for newer traders is, you know, particularly maybe after the initial training course, you know, you come off your training course and immediately you want to come in and start trying to make money. And it stops you from exploring and trying things out. It creates anxiety and stresses, all of which inhibit your learning. The paradox is, the more you focus on learning as a trader, probably the more you're actually going to earn. But if you focus on earning, you don't always get the learning. So it doesn't work both ways around. So, you know, keeping that learning mindset is really key. So here's a question for you to think about. Let's look at what a good trading decision is. So this is a grid which has been adapted from a book called Winning Decisions by 2 guys called Russo and Shoemaker. It's a good book if you've not read it. So essentially we've got a good process and poor process, and we could call this in trading terms disciplined or not disciplined. And then within that, obviously a trade can be a winning trade or a trade could be a losing trade. So we've got 4 possible outcomes: disciplined and a win, disciplined and a loss, undisciplined and a win, undisciplined and a loss. And really it comes down to, you know, what do we think is a good trade? But I'm sure we'd all agree that the best outcome would be a number 1, you know, that we do the right things and we get rewarded, a quadrant 1. The interesting question is then, what's the second best trade? Now some people will say, oh, it's a 3 because you won, you made money. And actually, if it was a one-off trade, that probably would be the right answer, but we're in a game of making multiple trades over time. And the danger if we get some quadrant 3 trades is essentially we are being rewarded for doing the wrong thing. So we're getting paid money, but we're doing the wrong thing. So then the brain, you know, through conditioning, starts to do more of the wrong thing. Whereas actually, if we're playing it over the long time, quadrant 2 is the second best trade outcome. We did the right things, but we just lost. And obviously, trading is probabilistic. This is one of the key things we have to realize in trading. So, you know, if you've got a strategy which, let's say it wins 60% of the time, you're going to lose 40% of the time. So you're going to lose at least 4 times out of 10, sometimes more than that, because it won't always be 4 out of 10. You might have strings of losses, 7, 8, 9 losing trades in a row, but they're only going to be statistical outcomes based on your trading strategy. So one thing we can do here actually is make a distinction between a losing trade, maybe in a bad trade. And I would say if you're in quadrant 3 and quadrant 4, where you didn't follow your process, Not where you flexed it intentionally, but where you knowingly broke it. Maybe you should have taken your stop loss, but you didn't, or you should have stayed in the trade, but you didn't, or you knowingly traded too much size. And so where you've almost intentionally broken your own rules, then we're into poor process. And what we want to try and do is avoid that. When I worked in professional poker, what I realized was even the best players have a lot of losing hands. They have a lot of quadrant 2 trades. And actually interesting, when I work with traders who also have played professional poker, one thing they're good at is differentiating, is separating out, a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. They're very aware of the process and how they play the game, and whether a hand was played as a losing hand or a bad hand. So one thing you can do, it's a neat little activity, and I've done it with many traders I've coached, is when you have made a trade, allocate it, so give it a quadrant number. So if you had a winning trade, it can either be a 1 or a 3. If you followed your process, it's a 1. If you didn't follow your process, it would be a 3. If you have a losing trade, but you followed your process, it will be a 2, if not a 4. And then over a period of maybe a week or a month, depending on your time frame and how much you're trading, have a look at what percentage of trades come into each quadrant and what amount of P&L, how much you're winning or losing in each of those quadrants. And that's a very useful exercise to do. And then what often happens is, and this is where it becomes doubly useful, is you'll find that at the point of executing a trade, almost in the back of your mind, a little part of you is thinking, if I put this trade on, will it be a 1-2 or will it be a 3-4? So, is my process good right now? So it can be a nice little mechanism to help with your trading discipline. Okay. And what I want to really try and encourage you to do, and this is a trait of really good traders, is good traders focus on the process of making good trading decisions. They focus on high quality trading. You're looking for good trades. You're trying to get good entries, manage the trade well, and then get out of the trade effectively. But it's a focus on the process. And they know that some trades will win. They know that some trades will lose. They accept that up front. Going into the trade, they've accepted the trade is, it's non-guaranteed. It's a probabilistic outcome. It could win. It could lose. You're just doing everything you can to increase your chances of success over the long term. And I think something, in line with this, another little shift to make is at the end of the trading session, rather than how much did I win or how much did I lose, ask yourself the question, how did I win what I won, or how did I lose what I lose? Get into the process, what actually happened. This is the key shift. It's moving away from worrying about results to getting much more into developing a trading process. And that's the big shift in thinking that we see in the better traders, as opposed to those who are not as successful, who are much more focused on results. Okay. Again, it's a paradox. The more you focus on results, the more impact it will have on your results, and the worse your results will be. The more you can let go of results and focus on your process and making good trades, the better your results will become. Okay. And I've seen this time and time again in my coaching with traders, all the way through from beginners right through to highly successful traders. This is just to share with you for interest. I like this. This is the Russo and Shoemaker version of the grid. So good process with a win, they called that deserved success. Good process with a loss, they called that a bad break. I think that's a nice little phrase. Poor process, so you didn't follow your rules but you win. Dumb luck. I think that's quite again a great term. And then if you do poor process and you lose, poetic justice. You've got what you deserved. And they'll be the big horrible losing trades. They're the ones where there's no plan, your risk management's out of control. They're the really big losses. They take a long time to recover from, and actually at a brain level, they're actually traumatic. So we really want to try and avoid those quadrant 4 trades, which means we also need to avoid the quadrant 3 and really focus on being in the top half of that grid, really focused on making good decisions. Two of the challenges of trading from a mindset perspective are risk and uncertainty. And we're beginning to kind of see that playing out in a few examples already. But just have a think about this example here. So imagine we're gonna flip a coin, and you can call heads or tails. Now, if you lose, so if you're incorrect, you have to pay me $100. and just have a think about, how much would you need to win if you were right in order to play the game. So how much would you want me to pay you if you were right, if we were playing that game? So if you lose, you pay me 100, but what would you want for winning? Now what we see generally in the studies that have been done is numbers around about $190 to $200. Essentially, we need to win twice as much to offset the pain of losing. So this is where we have loss aversion. We don't like to lose, and if we do lose, then what we do want is we want twice the payoff, and that's why often we'll see risk-reward ratios of around 2 to 1 and 3 to 1. Typically, the range goes from $101, so just a bit more, a bit of an edge, up to 300. Some people want 4, 5, 1,000. That may have been you, but typically we're in the 101 to 300 range, and an average around about 190, 200. But what we do need to do as traders is we need to accept there is a risk that you could lose. And if we flip the coin, just because it's 50-50, it doesn't mean you're going to lose one, then you're going to win the next one. You might lose several in a row. So I think a real key part of the trader's mindset is this idea of embracing risk, of enjoying risk, being open to risk, accepting the risk, but also being risk savvy, not being reckless, not being careless, not caring, but being considered, but certainly open to taking the losses. And I think that's a real key factor because, and again, I see this where professional poker players have come into trading, having played so many hands and won and lost so often, they seem to be able to adapt to losses in trading relatively quickly compared to other people. But it's that mindset around accepting the loss, embracing the risk that comes within trading. If you want the reward, then we need to be open to also accepting the risk. The challenge in trading is obviously there's also some uncertainty, so it's not just the risk alone. If you're playing blackjack or you're playing poker to a degree, you can work out the probabilities and you can use that, so you can create an element of certainty. And even if the edge is against you, at least you can calculate that it's against you. So there's still some knowns. So this again is an interesting example that comes from behavioral finance, where what they ask you to do is imagine there's a box. Box number one's got 100 balls in it, 50 are red, 50 are blue. Box number two has 100 balls in it as well. They're red and blue, but we don't know how many are red and how many are blue. And then they ask you to basically choose a color and then choose which box you would like to take it from. And as you may already have guessed, what we see is most people want to take the ball from box one. Now there might be a greater chance of taking the ball from box two and winning. But people like the certainty. We like, knowing it's 50-50. There's a certainty about that, which makes us feel a bit safer and secure at a nervous system level. So that's by far the most popular choice. And this underpins something called ambiguity aversion, basically that people don't like uncertainty. We like to kind of know what's going to happen. We like the weather forecast because we want to kind of get an idea about what the weather might be like tomorrow so we can plan for it. So humans have a natural craving for certainty. We're not as keen on uncertainty. But obviously to be a successful trader, you have to embrace uncertainty. Trading most of the time is very much like being in box two. We don't always know the probabilities at any given time. Things are shifting and changing all the time. So the uncertainty is high, and that's why often we can get stressed and anxious. The brain, the nervous system is unsettled by uncertainty. But we need to embrace that. We need to almost enjoy the uncertainty. And again, that's a key mindset we see in successful traders, is they're much more open and willing to take on the uncertainty. Just take a moment now to have a look at what you can see on your screen there. Just read out what you can see. Now, some of you may have seen this. Some of you may have seen this. So we all actually had this to begin with. This is kind of like our shared market screen. That's where we all were to begin with. But then through our perception, through our lenses, some of you saw this, opportunities are nowhere, some saw opportunities are now here. Now, it's not a psychological test. It doesn't mean anything in particular whether you saw one or the other. It's just what you saw at the time. But what it helps us to realize is when we're looking at something, different people see different things. And what we want to develop is a skill of mental flexibility. So we need to think about, if we're in a trading situation, we want the mental flexibility to be able to see things in the most useful way, to think like a trader, to embrace risk, to embrace uncertainty, to have the growth mindset. We need that flexibility. And I think a real key area where this becomes important is how we view things. So we know, the stress response that we get sometimes is a function of your perception. Did you think that whatever triggered the response was threatening? So we tend to get stressed when things are threatening, and the challenge is when we get stressed and the emotions come into the system, but our thinking brain goes offline. The emotional brain and the reptilian brain take over, the fight or flight response. And one way that we can shift that is by shifting from a threat to an opportunity. So here's a great example of mental flexibility. Just think about a losing trade. If we go back to our example before, if somebody sees a losing trade as a negative event, then it's under the threat. So when it comes in through their filtering system, it's seen as a threat, fight or flight response triggered, stress response in, thinking brain offline, and then we're not in a great place. If a person's able to see a losing trade as an opportunity to get information about the market and to learn something, so there's a gain here, then suddenly when they have the losing trade, what happens is we get a different response. Same for if a trader is having a losing run and they see the losing run has been threatening, then suddenly the stress comes into the system, we get increased risk aversion, energy levels go down, and it's hard to get out of that. But if the trader is able to see that as a chance to learn, to grow, to develop by going through that process, then we get a completely different set of outcomes. So the lenses you wear are critical. So if you're having in your trading unhelpful responses, if you're having emotions which you think are negative or you're behaving in negative ways, think about the event and then think about your mindset and think, am I seeing this as a threat? And if you are, then ask yourself the question, could I see this differently? How could this be an opportunity? And that's a question I use a lot in my coaching sessions with traders is, they'll come in, they'll be frustrated or stressed about something, they'll be in the threat perception, and I'll shift that into what could be good about this, what could be useful, how could this be helpful, what could you gain from this, what could you learn from this? And that shift is critical. And again, this is the mental flexibility we see in really successful traders. I remember, not from trading, but from football, I remember hearing somebody tell me that Arsene Wenger, the Arsenal football manager, was once asked, what's one of the most important kind of qualities of a successful striker? And he said the ability to be irrationally optimistic, i.e. to be able to see things in the best light possible, even when maybe they're really tough. And that's what we need to be able to do as traders, even when maybe it's the 5th losing trade in a row, or we've had a really tough week in the markets, or things just aren't going right, to be able to switch from the threat to the opportunity, to be irrationally optimistic, to look for what could be good about that, and suddenly you're changing your neurochemistry, you're changing the body chemistry, you're releasing different hormones, your brain's functioning differently, and your possibilities suddenly improve. So we need to be mentally flexible as traders. We need to look at things in the most useful way. Now, we've talked a little bit about beliefs, perceptions, and kind of thinking styles. And of course, what you need to do for yourself is you need to recognize what your thinking patterns and styles are, what your beliefs are. There are many ways you can do this. One way that I've touched on very quickly is think about emotions and behaviors you have which aren't helpful. Then think about the events that happen when you get those emotions and behaviors, and then kind of work out what's going on in the middle. So if I'm getting if I'm getting frustrated and stressed and chasing my losses after a losing trade, the losing trade's a trigger. What's my mindset? What am I thinking at the time that's creating those emotions and behaviors? The other way to do it is to take some time, and I put it take a moment, but this would be many moments really. You won't do this in a moment. You want a good period of time, but find some time to sit down and reflect on your trading. And what I often do with traders when I'm coaching them is get them to do this over maybe the period of a week or 2 weeks, and to keep adding to it. So you just keep adding more and more and more information on. But to think about, what your view of yourself. Think about your view of the markets. How do you see the markets? The markets are dangerous, or markets are unfair, or markets are rational. Trading is exciting, or trading is boring, or trading gives me opportunities. Losing is to be avoided, or losing is part of trading. Risk is dangerous, or risk is necessary in order to achieve reward. All of these are examples of beliefs. And what we have to recognize about beliefs is it's not about are they right or are they wrong. We've got to look at, is it useful or not? Does it help you to achieve what you're trying to achieve, in this case, in your trading? So, start off maybe with, give yourself 30 minutes, sit down, think about some of the key themes and headings from the slide there, and start to think about what you believe, what your thoughts are about these themes. When you've done that, put them into 2 columns, ones that you think are maybe helpful and not. It's useful if it helps you to achieve what you're trying to achieve in your trading. Some might be neutral, they're kind of neither helpful or unhelpful, and you might have some that maybe are not useful. So I was working with a trader, this is, or maybe it's 2 years ago now, and he was a trader in a bank, and he's had a tough start to the year, and it got to about June time, and I came in to do some coaching with him, and I remember him saying to me, Steve, these markets are impossible to trade. These markets are impossible to trade. So imagine you're a trader, you're coming into work, you're sitting in front of the markets, you're wearing the lenses, you've got your goggles on of the markets are impossible to trade. And so information's coming in from the screen, but it's always being filtered by the markets are impossible to trade. So you get frustration, you're not making any money. Because you're not making any money, you're not even trading. That's reinforcing the fact that the markets are now obviously impossible to trade. So we get trapped in this self-fulfilling belief system. And once we believe something to be true, what happens is we look for the evidence that it's true, we ignore the counter evidence. So we're kind of reinforcing the belief, that reinforces our behavior, and we're stuck. And that's what happened to him. So sometimes we need to be aware of our beliefs, and sometimes we need to be able to shift them, to change them. And here's a process for doing that. I've tried to make it as simple as I can so you can work through it on your own. So the first step is, as we talked about, examine your list of beliefs. Think about all your thoughts about trading. And then the question is this a belief you want to keep because it's useful, or do you want to get rid of it because it's limiting? Okay. And obviously all the useful ones we're just going to keep, but the ones that are not useful, here's the next step. So it's interesting, first of all, just to think about, where did that belief come from? So where did it evolve from? Because a lot of our beliefs weren't there, when we were born. We've learned these, from parents, from school, university, from our trading coaches, from books we've read, and we're picking up these beliefs all the time and kind of forming our mindset. So once you kind of identify a belief, a good step is to look at, well, where did I get that from? Maybe it was a book, maybe it's a particular trading coach, maybe it's someone's told you once, maybe it's something from when you were younger, from childhood. But it'll give you a sense of the fact that it's not been there all the time. It is something that you picked up and you've held on to for that period of time. And then you can ask yourself, well, how does having this belief help me? So how is it helpful for me? Because often if we've got a belief, it can in some way be helping us. Okay. So if a trader's got a belief, that losing trades are bad, then obviously there is a helpful part to that in terms of around, maybe trying to avoid losing trades or be careful around losses. But of course, the limiting factor of believing that is that when you have a losing trade, particularly in trading where it's very probabilistic, is you get very strong emotional reactions. Okay. So we have to look at it overall, it's probably not helpful. And then if you want to change it, you have to kind of think about, your mindset. Maybe there's this belief's a piece of the mindset. And if we're going to take that piece out, think about it in terms of what are we going to put in its place. So what would the new belief be? Yeah. So maybe it's, losses should be avoided at all costs, and we change that to losses are a part of trading and I fully accept them. Then what you could do, because what we want to try and do now is we've got to start to get the belief, a bit like, I guess, a program in the computer. We've got to put the program in and we've got to kind of run the program. So now what we can do is we write the belief down, and what you might do is imagine yourself with that belief, and imagine what you'd be like in your trading. So you might imagine a losing trade, but with your new belief, think about how you might now respond emotionally, how you respond behaviorally, so you're a bit calmer, not quite as frustrated, don't find yourself chasing the trade, and then doing it on a daily basis. So you're kind of rehearsing, you're kind of growing into the belief. And then what we need to start doing is you need to catch yourself thinking in the new way, and you're kind of reinforcing it. So whenever you're kind of doing things in the new way, give yourself a pat on the back. Oh, great, that's me. That's how I do things now. That's how I think now. And if you find yourself drifting back to the old way, and that will happen because this is a behavioral change process over time, then recognize, oh, that's my old belief, and that's the old me thinking, and then just come back into the new belief. So you've got to practice thinking in this way. This is the key thing. A lot of trading is about developing skills. There's technical skills, there's tactical skills, and there's mental skills, and all those skills get better through practice. So you've got to practice thinking like a trader, and if you're changing your thinking, you've got to practice your new thinking. Now, just a couple of things to start to wrap up. This isn't the full list, but this is just a list of some mindset factors that I think are important. It's called the mastery mindset because it's the mindset really of high achievers and high performers. And this is related here into the trading context. But these are key things I think are really important to bring into your trading. So aiming to be the best trader you can be. Have the best skills you can have, the best knowledge you can have, the best strategy you can have to do things in the best way possible. If you keep working on that, then you'll keep getting better and your performance will improve. And this is something I saw a lot of in the high performers in the sports world when I was working in sports psychology, this desire to be the best they can be. This is very common in the growth mindset, which is very linked to the mastery mindset. Focus on yourself and your own performance, not others. Don't worry too much about what you're hearing in the chat rooms, what your friends are saying. The goal is for you to get better. It can be useful to talk to and look at what other people are doing and to talk to successful traders particularly, but not to get too obsessed. But for many people, that becomes a source of interference. Keep looking for ways to improve. We don't have to like losing, but we want to learn from our setbacks and losses. Again, that's the classic growth mindset. Yeah? We don't want to lose, we don't want to make mistakes, but we accept that we will have losses, we will make mistakes, but we'll learn from them. So the thinking differently is not seeing these as negatives, but turning them into positives. If we look at our decision-making grid, not being satisfied with a good result or an outcome if the approach or performance was flawed. So not getting excited about a winning trade if you know that you were ill-disciplined in making that trade. Yeah, that's a key thinking shift to make for. We have to accept 100% responsibility for your performance. No blaming, no complaining. The key question is, how did I create that? How did I create that? What was my role in that trade? You placed the trade, it was your decision making, taking responsibility for the outcome. Committing to the processes that bring success and maintain them. Focus on what's controllable and embracing risk and uncertainty. That's really key. If risk isn't for you and uncertainty is not for you, then you're going to find it really hard to have or you're going to get a lot of stress and anxiety in the markets world. So you've got to kind of find ways to manage that. And also you can do that by skills and knowledge can reduce uncertainty. Managing your risk effectively. I think we touched on that in the first webinar. That's a way you can embrace risk and be in a risk environment, but by managing your risk effectively is really key. Preparation, good preparation can reduce uncertainty. So there are things that you can be doing, but psychologically, we need to embrace them, accept that's the world we're in. Now, I want to finish off quite quickly with something else that can be very, very helpful. Is some of you may be aware of something that's called mindfulness. Mindfulness is really about attention and awareness, and it's quite a growing area at the moment. Grown a lot over the last 10 to 15 years, particularly. Very popular now. And interestingly, it's being used in areas like surgery and aviation and the military and in sports, and more so in the trading and investing world. And I've been using it with my own trading clients probably for the last 4 or 5 years, probably since about 2010 particularly. And recently wrote a book called Trade Your Mind, all about mindfulness and using mindfulness in the markets. But the reason I mention it is because one of the skills that you learn through mindfulness practice is you learn to notice and be aware of your thoughts. And this is a very powerful skill because you can't manage your thinking if your awareness of your thinking is low. So one of the fundamental skills we want is almost a moment-to-moment awareness of our thinking, and that's something. That's a skill that you can develop through mindfulness-based practice. And I think the other thing I love about mindfulness is, as well as the awareness, noticing our thoughts, is the idea that thoughts are just thoughts. So you can learn to manage your thinking by recognizing, we're getting thousands of thoughts a day. Some can be useful, some are unhelpful, some are neutral. But recognizing, with our unhelpful thoughts that, ultimately they are just thoughts, and we don't have to always react to that thought. We can have the thought that we've had a losing trade. We get the thought, I need to get my money back. We can have that thought, but we don't need to react to the thought. But if we've got low awareness, then actually we do become reactive to that thought. But with greater awareness, recognizing the thought, recognizing that it's just a thought and that we don't have to respond to it, being the observer of our thinking allows us to notice and to be more responsive rather than reactive, to choose, do I want to chase my loss, or actually do I want to wait for the next good trade, be patient, be selective. But we get that cognitive control. And what's interesting is in trading is, quite often our mind, when stress is high, when there's risk, when there's uncertainty, particularly when time frames are short, our brain takes lots of shortcuts. They're called heuristics and biases. And we make thinking errors. They're called mental blind spots as traders. And the disposition effect that we looked at the beginning, with the loss aversion and loss seeking without flipping the coin, that's an example of that. And that happens through what's called the intuitive mind. It's the part of the brain which kind of makes a first impression. It's the part of the brain which knows that 2 times 2 is 4. It's very quick, very automatic. And under risk and uncertainty, we can get sucked into that part of our brain. So it's almost like everything's a bit too fast sometimes, and we need to sometimes slow down, have a bit of self-control, be more deliberate. And that's the second part of the brain, the deliberate mind, sometimes called system 2. Now, again, what they're suggesting is that through mindfulness practice is that you can develop your deliberate mind. So you actually develop a greater cognitive muscle. If you think about your thinking muscle, what mindfulness practice can do is develop your thinking muscle, which makes your thinking of a higher quality, but it also means you're much more able to manage system 1, which is that very quick, often emotion-driven part of the brain. So we haven't got time to cover it all today, but definitely it's worthwhile thinking about looking into mindfulness or mindfulness-based practices as an element of mental skills training. Okay, so just to summarize some of the key things that we've covered today. First of all, mindset matters, no doubt about it. As Banthorpe said, you're trading your beliefs. Your mindset are the filters you're seeing the markets through. So moment by moment, it's directly affecting your trading decision making. Your mindset's made up of a series of beliefs. They can be useful or they can be limiting. We need to be aware of our beliefs. We need to be aware of our thinking. We've gone through a few processes of which you could do that. It could be the mindfulness. It could be the tracking back from the emotions and the behaviors to the event, to the mindset. It could be sitting down doing that exercise that we talked about. It's possible to change your beliefs. Most of us through our life will have at some time or other changed beliefs about something. Maybe our political beliefs, or maybe our beliefs about, who's a favorite pop group, maybe even our football team, or, our views around the world can shift and change. So, we can be quite fluid with our beliefs. We can also be quite set in stone. We want to think about developing this mastery mindset, about thinking differently. That's the real key, and that's almost like I say one of the key goals in trading is learning to think differently. And again, I'll just reinforce it. I think there's really, really good value in all of you, looking at mindfulness or mindfulness-based practices. You haven't got to go into it really deep and do hours and hours of practice a day. It might be getting to 5-10 minutes a day, or 3, 4, 5 times a week, or even just learning some of the core principles. But I think there's really good value in developing your cognitive awareness, the deliberate mind, through the practice of mindfulness or mindfulness type practices. Okay, and that brings us to the end of session 2. I think at this point, obviously, I'll take a pause. I know I've gone pretty quick and we've covered quite a lot of things there, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to take questions at this stage.
Okay, Steve, thank you very much for the presentation. Can you hear me well? Hello?
Okay, yeah, I'm not getting any sound coming through, I don't think, at the moment, so I've got the questions here. Okay, great. Okay, question. You've trained a vast amount of traders and fund managers. Which type of traders, FX, equity, bond, or other derivatives, or even poker players, were the hardest to train? Ooh. Good question. I don't think it's so much about the product or the markets the guys are trading that makes it more difficult. I mean, I think some of the more structured products, so some of the banks have very highly structured products. Maybe where there's high levels of either automation, or where there's maybe very long time frames. I think sometimes that's not so much harder, but I think maybe it's not as much of my niche or what I'm really interested in. I think I get a lot more, I feel there's more value and more returns maybe over the, not the micro time frames, but over the short-ish, either days or weeks or months type time frames. And where obviously there's a human element. I've done work with people who've traded algos and have done computerized trading, helping them with their process and to understand themselves in the markets, but a very small percentage. Poker players were interesting. It took me a little while to learn a bit about the game. I think the most important thing for me as a coach is people's openness to learning. So I think providing people are open and they're curious, then actually they're very easy to work with. As I say, the only things that maybe would be a bit more of a challenge would be if it's very long time frame, like 3 to 5 year time horizon investors, a bit more of a challenge for me with my work, or if it is highly automated, again, maybe it's not quite as relevant for what I'm doing. But yeah, but it's a really good question. Thanks. Okay, question. You talk so much about development, training, improving. So any of us can become a trader by working hard. But have you met a sort of a naturally born trader, somebody who was just born with the talent to trade? This is a really interesting question, and it all comes down to, do we think trading, how much of it is talent, how much of it can be learned? And I guess that can apply really to anything, in music and in sport. How much is talent, how much is learned? Certainly what the research is showing is talent plays a part, but it's a smaller part than we probably thought maybe many years ago. And actually, a lot of really high performers, this is true of trading as well as other areas, are there as a result of significant amounts of practice and time. This is where the growth mindset we talked about becomes so important. Because let's imagine it was purely on talent, then they'd get to a stage where you'd realize that maybe you haven't got the talent and you would just give up. But you might find out maybe you've not got a natural talent, but through hard work, if you really wanted to be a trader, you could maybe make it work for yourself, because you believe that you can change, you can improve, and you can learn. So now I have met some people for definite who I guess the way I would phrase it is they have a tendency to think like a trader naturally. So they kind of, maybe their attitudes to risk and uncertainty are very kind of trader-like. They've got the growth mindset. Either they've learned it or they kind of had it naturally. And this is the key thing sometimes, is when we look at natural talent, we have to try and work out, did the person have those abilities genetically, so before they came out of the womb, or did they have them through, did they develop them maybe through early childhood experience or through school experiences? So when we meet somebody as a trader, they're a combination of genetics, environments, and experiences. And it's hard to tell at that stage how much of that was pure talent, genetic only, or how much has been nurtured in some way through their life. I mean, one of the guys I coach, who's a very good trader, he looks like a natural trader, but then when you look into his background, his family environment was one, they're kind of very embracing of risk and of uncertainty, and they kind of played a lot of kind of games of chance, and his dad taught them poker quite early on. So it's how much of it was pure genetics, how much of it was through the environment and experience. It's hard to work out, but the great experiment done here was, well, two really. One was with Richard Dennis and the Turtle Traders, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, and the other one obviously is the BBC program $1 Million Traders, both looking at that idea of, can you take ordinary people and make them into successful traders? And from both programs, it showed, I think, that you can develop and grow people as traders. However, the caveat is, I think, what we have to also appreciate is, it doesn't mean we're all going to be, highly successful traders. Just as if we all took up football and we practiced hard at football, we wouldn't all become, international players. Some of us would get further than others for a variety of reasons. But wherever you're at, I think you can become a better trader. Okay, last question. More learning means we become better. We work on our mindset, trading strategy, and so on. But isn't this sometimes confusing? The more you learn, the more information you gather, more information to digest. Instead of focusing on just a couple of things and become a master of them, we try to learn too much. Isn't that better is the enemy of good? Yeah, it's normally that good is the enemy of better, so I like the little twist there. It's a great point. I'm working with a fund manager at the moment. This is an example, and he's been trading for about 15 years. We've been working together for just probably about 1.5 years now, and certainly in the early stages of our coaching together, one thing I noticed was, or a theme that came through, was he was having challenges executing his strategy. And there was kind of hesitations, and sometimes he would, sometimes he wouldn't, and there was a few challenges. But what I noticed was, he had huge numbers of screens, charts, graphs, indicators, and he also was collecting lots of different research coming in each day, like 100 and so emails with different bits of research and so on. And it's a bit like a snowball. Over the years, as he'd read more and learned more, he kept plugging new things in. But of course, it got to a point where the snowball was so big that actually it was too big. It now became a problem. Early on, the gathering was really good. And what we need to do, the process needs to be, it's kind of like you roll with a snowball, it gets a bit big, new things have joined it. Then you need to do a bit of a kind of a review, keep what's working, lose what isn't working, add in the new things, or don't add them in if they're not useful. So there needs to be a continual review and development program. that goes on. And I think that's what doesn't happen. Most people just kind of keep almost mindlessly kind of keep learning and learning and learning and learning. So, you know, I think it's that stage, and I think sometimes, you know, it's recognizing, and I think Einstein said that keep it as simple as possible, but no simpler. And I think, you know, recognizing that there's a tendency that we want to kind of get more and more information because we feel confident, but actually doesn't always improve our results. So, you know, so sometimes simplicity is the key. Adam, thanks so much. I'll see you there. You're wrapping me up. Thanks for for having me on again. Hopefully everyone's found some things useful today. Thanks for hosting it, and thanks for your help with all the tech and stuff. And thanks to everybody, and goodbye from me, and I'll see you all for session 3, emotions and trading. Probably going to be quite a big one. Thanks very much.